Hello, Annette Franz. Welcome to the Doing CX Right show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a great conversation. Anytime we can talk about customer experience, it's going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I think the world knows who you are, but just in case, please share, who are you? What do you do professionally?
Absolutely. So I am a customer experience coach and consultant. I started my own company, CX Journey Inc., about 5 years ago and do all of my favorite things under that umbrella. But I've been in this customer experience world for 30 years. As a matter of fact, this is my 40th year. Started at J.D. Power and Associates back in 1992. And just have watched how this thing called customer experience has evolved from then, when we didn't even call it customer experience, right? So a lot of my time is spent with clients working on their culture, their customer experience, their employee experience. And then I spend a little bit of time speaking and maybe writing a book or two. So,
And you're also a mom. And.
Yes, I know, right? You know how that is. So yeah, absolutely.
I do. So talking about customer experience and your profession, why? Why is this your passion?
So it's really interesting. You know, when I was a kid, my grandmother used to say, you should be a teacher. You should be a teacher. And I was like, I'm not going to be a teacher. That just does not interest me at all. And here we are full circle and we're teaching. So I think that's my why. That's why I love this so much, is that, you know, because I've been in the profession for so long and I've seen it evolve and I've seen a lot of different things and I've seen things that work and don't work. And I've always said since day one too, when, you know, people would ask me when I was at J.D. Power and Associates, what do you do? And I would say, well, I'm working with companies to help them improve their customer satisfaction. At that time, that's what we called it, customer satisfaction or customer loyalty, so that they can improve, their business as well. I mean, improve the business to improve the experience to help the business grow and things like that, you know. Maybe not in such sophisticated terms, but that's what I always used to say. And I always used to say, you know, for me, the gratification or the things that make me happy are when I see those outcomes and when I see those results and know that we work together to get there. So teaching and helping to achieve those outcomes.
What would you say is a fun fact that people might not know about you, personally or professionally?
I think I've shared this one before, but I'll share it again. In my younger days, it's been about 25, 26 years. I used to compete in bodybuilding, not professionally, amateur, but compete for a couple of years in bodybuilding. So, but, you know, the discipline that I got as a result of getting ready for contests and doing all of that, and the diet and getting to the gym every day and doing what you need to do, that's just stayed with me. That both from a diet perspective, from a workout perspective, and just, you know, in life in general. So in business as well.
I imagine you have a lot of strength mentally and physically.
Well, there is that. I will attribute the mental strength, though, to my mom, who is, you know, both my parents actually, but especially my mom. So that's where the mental strength comes from.
We need an hour just on that topic, right? About moms.
And definitely.
I would love that. That's after the show.
Yeah.
So you talk about putting the customer in customer experience. What does that mean to you?
It really means that pretty much exactly that, right? We need to make sure that we put the customer and the customer's best interest into everything that we do within the business, right? I always say, you know, no discussions, no decisions, no designs without bringing that customer voice in and making sure that the customer is represented within the business, because it's so funny. There are so many times when you talk to people about what we do and it's like, well, if you didn't have customers, would you be in business? And so why wouldn't you take the time to bring their voice into everything you do to make sure that they are happy with what you do or come back, you know, all those things. And I love to, use a Seth Godin quote at this point where he talks about finding products for customers instead of finding customers for your products. And I think that's such a great comparative or complementary. That's what I'm looking for. A complementary quote to, you know, putting the customer in customer experience.
Hmm. If it's so obvious, which it is to us,
Right.
and I'm no brain scientist here. If it's so obvious, why do you think there's resistance?
That's the $64,000 question. I wish we could all answer that because seriously, it is. It's all about the customer. If we're not designing and creating products for customers that they can actually use and solve problems for them, why are we doing this? And it's funny because a lot of times when I get, some new tech startups or startups reaching out to me to say, hey, will you take a look at our product? And I do. And the first question that I ask them is, what problem does this solve for your customers? And they're like, that's a good question. And that's a good, and so I bang my head against the wall too, because why are we doing these things if we're not doing it for the customer? So,
yeah. Yeah. So let's go into your newest book, Build to Win.
Yep.
You discuss 10 principles that form the foundation for building such a culture and winning. Can you talk about some of those highlights?
Yeah. So there are 10, like you said, and you have to do all of them. If you want to be customer centric, if you want to build that customer centric culture and customer centric organization, you have to do all of them. And I think that's an important takeaway. I think that the other thing that's important is that each one of them on its own has exactly what you're asking for, actionable tips, right? So the first one is probably the most important one, and that is culture is the foundation, right? So what are some actionable tips from that? Well, culture is core values plus behavior. So you've got to define your core values, and then you have to define the behaviors, both acceptable and unacceptable for each one of those core values. But you can't stop there. You then have to socialize that and operationalize that, right? So you're going to hire, fire, promote. Through the lens of those core values, you're going to make decisions, you're going to develop processes and policies all through the lens of those values. So really important things that you can do as a result of just that one principle. And that a lot of times that alone just stops people in their tracks because they're like, we don't do this, right? So I'm sure some organizations that haven't done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, the second one, I won't go through all 10, but I'll just go through a couple of them. The second one, is around leadership commitment and alignment. So we really need to get our leadership, we don't want buy-in. Buy-in is like, yeah, that sounds good, whatever, but we want commitment.